Okay.
No, I mean, Zach should know about this because he was emailed. I haven't heard from him in any way. So looks like we have 2 attendees.
See who they are.
Carter Booth and Fatima Diallo, and we have a guest in the room. Can you share your name with us?
I'm Thangi.
What's your name?
Thangi. Theingi.
Theingi. And what's your last name?
Thann.
Tangy Tan.
Yeah.
Thann.
Yeah.
And where are you from? Are you a student or are you a resident or?
Yeah, I'm a student and I'm originally from Taiwan.
Okay. Where are you studying?
At Parsons.
At Parsons. Student Parsons. Okay, from Taiwan.
Welcome.
Welcome. All right, it's 6:35.
You can tell chat, start doing part.
We either have
Great.
million.
Actually, we were very popular with the schools this week.
Good.
So welcome to those of us who are here. This is a September meeting of the Human Services Committee. Are we recording this?
It is being recorded.
Great. Every year, as you all maybe know, the community board is asked to contribute, is asked to produce a community board document. 2 of them, actually, the statement of needs, and which is a narrative. And then we are asked to make requests on our budget priorities. Our task every year as a committee, all the committees, is to provide our contribution to that document that will come out of the community board. I've given you a boatload of stuff, which actually, Ivy, I haven't given you because I wasn't counting on the absent on the remote, and this would have been hard to email it, although if I had known so, I should have done so. Anyway, I did send you guys some materials in advance. What I want this meeting to do is we can review what we did last year, but our basic outcome is to identify what we think are our priorities from a human services perspective. And then I can write with perhaps some collaboration or a lot of collaboration, what our contribution will be to this document. We will have an executive committee meeting where we'll be asked to advocate for any budget requests we want, whether they are capital expenses, capital budget requests or expense budget requests. And look, we have another person.
Hi,
Oh,
I'm back.
Zach, nice to meet you. No, that's okay.
How are you?
Sit down.
Thank you.
So here, sign your initial here.
Who's that?
Zach is a new member of our committee. So I could wait till Akila gets here because she's running late to tell you all that because I sent you all an email that Zach and Akila are both joining our committee. And sadly, Will Benish has been off of our committee. It seems he's on 2 other committees. I didn't realize that. So
Hi, Zach.
we are up 1, which is great. But it's a quiet participation this month. And the preamble I was saying, Zach, is that you can take one of each of those printouts. The big fat ones, yeah. Is that what we need to do at this meeting is go over what we've done in the year, identify what we think are our top priorities, and ask ourselves whether those have any budget implications. Do we want to make any requests for budget for spending, capital or expense spending from the city? And then I would like to also talk about the year to come, because this committee, by and large, except for very few circumstances, our agenda is completely self-directed. The only times really that I can recall we've been asked to host a meeting is when there's a conversation about a shelter that's being planned. Otherwise, we decide what we want to look at. And that can be a challenging thing. So I'm always just trying to think, well, what is it we want to advocate for at the end of the year? And what do we think are the biggest priorities? So I invite you all. The paperwork that I shared, Ivy, was just what we did last year, which I shared with you by email.
And I put the link to the Google Drive in the chat, so I can click on it and.
Yeah, but I don't know. Okay. And
Thank
then
you.
I shared a bunch of stuff, which I mean, I can share this with you, Ivy, tomorrow. I can email all this. This is just a big fat printout that I did that includes just like a page of a snapshot of our district, our rent burden, access to parks, you know, income, that kind of thing.
Email it to her now?
No, because I have to organize it.
Just this document.
Well, I have to organize the doc. Oh, you want to, oh, you mean you want to do it that, like scan it?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think anyone's really gonna have a time to go through this.
Okay.
So I mean, I guess it's really for interest. The other thing I included in here was a list of health and human services facilities in our district. This is from the city's community profile page, facilities list, and also child and youth facilities but I pulled out Department of Education because we have another committee that deals with that. So those are things that we can refer to as we think of what we want our priorities to be going forward or advocating for them now. They're really just to jog your memory. So the first place to jog your memory is just your memory. And the other thing I included was something that I personally thought was an important thing that we did this year, which was we held this joint meeting, as you recall, with other community boards where we talked about serious mental illness. So I included the letter that CB2 sent to elected officials on our findings, and I also included their response. So at this point, I would just open up the discussion for what do we think we want to put into our statement of need. Anyone have an opinions? Ryder. I'm just starting with you.
I think I imagine it is not too different from last year in terms of what our need areas are. I mean, I always forget what actually is like allowed for the requests. And but I guess the requests are one thing. Within the purview of our committee, street homelessness and its intersection with mental health and addiction issues are a very kind of foregrounded set of things.
I agree.
And there are many service providers in the community or that serve the community. And we know that some of them have specific capital requests. But in terms of the needs, attention to that intersecting set of issues, I think continues to be the highest priority.
You know, it's interesting, actually, when I look at what we wrote last year, I would scrap most of it. I think that, well, only because, sorry, but I'm gonna just take a look at this package. I included the 3 top pressing issues that the community board submitted overall for the entire community board, and those were land use trends, park and open space, and schools. So from our perspective, I think it's kind of remarkable that there is, I mean, I think it was appropriate for last year, but I don't think it's appropriate for this year. No mention of mental illness, no mention of substance use, and no mention of homelessness, which from at least the perspective of this committee, we see a lot of. So I would actually advocate, I personally think that those intersections you're describing, which should be our community board's top priority. But we'll see what they all think. And then our input included better data on our senior residents, which is absolutely interesting and important, but I don't think it reaches the top levels. We asked for funds for Greenwich House to be able to continue doing interventions in Washington Square Park. And this, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. When we came out of the pandemic and there was a lot of activity in Washington Square Park, Gail Brewer, who was at the time the borough president, asked a number of existing social service providers to coordinate their activities so that there was always someone doing outreach in Washington Square Park. It was an interesting idea. It didn't collect any data. It was not very well, it wasn't funded really. It was very little funded. And so we have no idea if it worked or not. So last year we were asking for them to fund that. And I think that our request this year would be totally different. I don't even think that Greenwich House is in the business of spearheading that. Ivy, you know what? This is a really small meeting, so if you want to just jump in when you want to, just jump in.
Okay. All right. The stuff last year obviously is very different from today. Now, I don't know how to synthesize this, but I think one of the challenges has been like how it played out with new needs by the new immigrants versus like suddenly we like for years we couldn't get housing in general or resources, and now it's so enormously impact. I don't know if there's a way to do a budget where we actually have advocates that are pulling these resources and not like being lost, that we can't ever now. It seems like now we can't reach them even. It just seems more impossible, and it's getting lost in the massive challenge that we have.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying is.
English.
The migrant issue, which we dealt with in this committee, has really overwhelmed the city. And we know that the city is pulling out all the stops to cope with this, including spending gajillions of dollars on emergency shelters from hotels because we don't have the other shelters. And I think what you're saying is there a way to bring the focus back to the issues that pre-existed, the issues, not just the migrants, which the entire city has recognized and the federal government is recognizing as a big problem, but also just our ongoing domestic homeless population, our ongoing domestic population of people with substance issues and street homeless. And
which was already really challenging to have them like on the ground executing, and suddenly now I think it's getting even more lost, and we're having less communications of what that looks like and accountability.
Yeah, I mean, please everyone jump in. I mean, I talk, so just jump in. There's 6 of us around a table. Yeah, I think that it would be a good thing personally for us to say, recognizing the impact of the migrant crisis and what an emergency that is. We don't want to lose sight of underlying conditions that have existed and been exacerbated since the COVID crisis, which include, and we see this in our district a lot, more than the migrant crisis, which for better and for worse, mostly being housed outside of our district, except for on Grand Street. So I think that there is a way to advocate in the narrative for that. And I would actually like to make some budget requests that I think will be ignored, but I think that there should be ongoing work to seeking RFPs that will provide shelters in our district, safe havens, drop-in centers, shelters. And I would also like to see something we advocated for on mental illness, which is an IMT.
The vans?
Yeah, no, it's called an IMT. What's the acronym for it? It's
The mobile?
Intensive mobile.
The mobile units.
Yeah, intensive mobile treatment, which we know is about $1.5 million per team. And it's the highest level of attention that can be given to people with serious mental illness. And the city has funded, the mayor decided last year is going to fund 5 of them. But I feel comfortable asking for more.
Totally.
Yeah. And will be ignored, but I think that if nothing else, it's a message to our elected officials who I think agree with this, that the other things that were on the list last year, well, a follow-up community health assessment. So health is part of the purview of this committee, and which we tend to forget. And I've been saying this for years. Lenox Health Greenwich Village, which is a standalone emergency room connected to Lenox Hill Hospital, replaced a full service hospital that used to exist at St. Vincent. It's been a long time now. But when St. Vincent's first closed, there was a community assessment done for like about $80,000 to see what the impact was of not having a full hospital. We've lived now with this emergency room for 8 years, whatever it is. And I would like to see, and maybe I'll have to just start campaigning with our electeds because I don't know who's going to pay for this. I'd like to see a follow-up community health assessment. I mean, this might be a great model, and it might not be. And we have no way of knowing. And then, I mean, I'm just looking at this list, allocate funds to add benches and address issues of homelessness, misuse of the space in Golden Swan Park. I don't know, that to me seems
I don't recall.
Where is
so
Swan
specific.
Park?
Golden Swan Park is a teeny park on Sixth Avenue and north of Bleecker.
Oh, that tiny park?
Tiny
Oh,
park.
that has literally one bench, maybe two. Okay.
Just don't see that this
Yes, okay.
priority, right? Okay,
Can I,
yeah,
can I answer a couple questions?
yes.
Do we have any statistics about the homeless population? Whether they're itinerantly homeless, mostly
Citywide, you mean?
no, in our district. Like when the city does homeless assessments, do we get a breakdown at a district level?
I think, I may not know, but this is what I think, Ryder, you trying to ask, because you've been working on this for a while. First of all, the homelessness assessment that's done once a year is done manually, like one night a year.
They go out. Mhm.
Right, and
Yeah,
so the count is a very rough.
yeah.
I think that the best way of gauging how many homeless people are in our district is to look at the work of the Manhattan Outreach Consortium, which is people who have been employed by, the city has employed an organization called CUCS to employ 3 other organizations, and they do outreach on the streets. I don't think that the numbers are what will overwhelm us, because I think that there are probably more homeless people in other boroughs. Right?
Yeah.
But I think that it remains, personally, I think it's a big issue for us, also because we see it in our public spaces. It's related to our economic development. It's related to tourism, which is a huge thing in our district. As far as the homeless population in our district, it's almost zero, because we have no shelters. We have 1 shelter.
Just the one on 14th.
Yeah, which is 24 beds.
Mm.
And it's 70 people drop in. I mean, they have a larger number that comes in the course of the day, but so we are not doing our share
Okay.
in terms of, yeah, please speak.
No, well, that is helpful to know. I think the path I was thinking makes less sense then, but I saw some other references in here, mostly about public bathrooms. And I'm trying to think about that thread between the unhomed population and the immigrant population, which I'm sure, as you all have seen, there are many more independent women, fruit sellers and vendors that are now working, just trying to make money any way they can, who also need some baseline of public facilities that are accessible and actually accessible, not like the accessible parks next to tall buildings, but actually accessible. So I wonder if that's something that we could fit in somewhere. I actually don't know how many public bathrooms there are in the district, but I would guess very few.
Well, for one thing, I think it's a
Very few.
conversation we should have start in this coming year.
Yeah, I think that was one of the subjects on my list for the coming year, because I don't know, like, there are things I would love for us to say,
Yeah,
but they're not things we've covered in the last year, and I don't know what the kind of committee-wide consensus is. And public bathrooms is one of them. I would hope that the committee would all be supportive of like advocating for more, but we haven't actually had a discussion about it. The city council did pass a bill recently that requires the identification of one new site per zip code in the city for a public bathroom, and it's DOT and the Department of Parks have to jointly do that identification.
so it's DOT and
Is that at the community board level? Like, what is the
One per zip code.
1 per zip code. We have about 5 zip codes in our, something like that, right, in our
So
community.
it's like not a lot, and that's like the bill itself is a step in the right direction, but so like we're 93rd out of the list of top 100 cities in the country in terms of public bathrooms per capita. But like, that is what is gonna happen in the coming year, is that process. So I don't know if we want to weigh in on what we think
No,
that should be.
I think we should do that in the coming year.
So then
And I think the question is how to get at it.
personally and
Gonna say, yeah, public
Yeah.
bathrooms, who has noted that, right? But what? Hello,
If I could share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I was just on the budget consultation with the Department of Parks, and they have a upgrade to what we would consider a porta potty. It's called a Portland something or other,
okay,
and you may have seen them at wineries where they have a little trailer that they bring in, and there's It's actually,
Yeah.
you know, you can actually wash your hands and, yeah. I think that that's what this Portland thing is. It is ridiculously expensive to create a public bathroom in an outdoor space like a park. I mean, it goes between $2 and $4 million just for the
Takes forever.
restrooms. Not allowed to call them conversations anymore. Restrooms. So anyway, that was in the parks conversation for this coming budget. But that's something that I'm sure we, the office can connect you, the committee.
Yes.
To a resource that could at least explain what the options are, and then you can make your own decision about what it is you want to add.
Yeah, I think that we want to have a conversation about it. It's a great idea. And I think that we also want to get at it from a few different, like, look at what the actual problems are. Because, you know, we're a historic district. It'll be interesting to see who feels comfortable putting a bathroom next to a historic building. There will be people that come out against that, you know, so it would be good to sort of anticipate what the sticking points
It
are.
would be cool if we could convene a conversation to help identify those sites, one for zip code, but also maybe recommend that be a baseline and not a ceiling, and maybe we could help identify multiple sites for zip code, or that as a baseline plus other options to supplement that.
Right.
So yeah, I would love to see that on the agenda.
That's a great topic. I feel with Ryder that I'd be a little reluctant to advocate for it today, because we haven't really heard the conversation. A little pie in the sky, but I think it's a great conversation for the.
This might be another one that it might be in that zone. But as we all know, there are like these composting bins everywhere now suddenly. And there has been no marketing about them at all, unless you're like on the distribution list of the borough president. You're like literally nothing, not even on like the links, not on the digital signs that sit above the subway, like literally none. I'm like just standing on a soapbox telling people how to compost. So because that is, you know, the reason we have so many rats is because of trash in the bags that are on the street that are sitting for a while. I think there's like a pretty direct line to health and quality of life, human services. So if there is something if that is something you discussed before, if we could conceptualize what that could look like from budget request, or if not, maybe it could just be on the docket for the coming year.
It's an interesting one. I don't know if we've ever engaged with DSNY, with the Department of Sanitation. We certainly have not. I don't know if Quality of Life ever has.
It's sorry, go ahead.
They come to district service cabinet, so the staff convenes a meeting once a month called District Service Cabinet. And it is a meeting with the uniformed services and other agencies that have liaisons to it. And so it's usually on a staff level. It's not the commissioner.
Yeah.
And DSNY does come, not every month. And they've been in changing a lot of things. As you know, there's the new rules for when you can put trash on the curb, and they pushed it later, which it complicates life for a lot of residential buildings. They have now changed the rules with respect to the containerization of trash for anybody that's a food service. Which ironically is not, they don't pick it up, it's private party for it. That's how you have to do it. That in turn is gonna complicate how we have outdoor dining, because you got those containers have to go somewhere.
Complicating outdoor.
Anyway, so to your point, they do come, and they sometimes, but they don't always come. And that's at the most basic level. And then the orange big bellies is what I'm calling them. The orange big bellies are an app which solves a lot of the problems that go with a big belly, like who has the key. But it is, you're right, it is not well advertised. And, you know, from a certain perspective, we have an e-blast here at CB2. We can use that platform as one of means that you want to promote that if it were your wish.
I think that actually I should ask our chair who she would like to deal with DSNY issues.
I'm just back, but trash was also on my list of things to talk about next year and to kind of take ownership of, because I don't think quality of life. I think quality of life would be properly renamed like street event. It has. All right, now
it's now called street activities and resiliency.
But in terms of the trash, Eric Botcher has come to our meetings regularly, you know, updating us the work that he does with sanitation.
Right, that's true. All right,
Yeah,
let me
so
correct.
I've learned a lot about that. I've seen the you know, like the impermeation into culture through the subway, you know, screens as well. This is happening, blah blah blah. But you know, we could invite Tish, right? Is that her name?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesse.
We'd love to have her, you know,
Can
in our meetings. Why not?
We'd love it. We'd love it, but
I saw you should send them. Yeah.
maybe what I should do is I should ask Susan about this,
Yeah.
because I think that this might be something really a board agenda issue for the coming year, and
I would level that up and say, should our committee be the Human Services and Quality of Life Committee? Like, the things we're talking about, public bathrooms, street homelessness, like, this is what people think of when they talk about quality of life issues, sanitation.
And then there's the other thing is like, you know, what spots are identified for, I guess, what is it called? Immigration sanctuaries, like going back to places of that have tax exempt, like churches and all this stuff, they have bathrooms. It'll be nice to, you know, make those available. I mean, they're only used on the weekends and, you know, they get a huge tax break, whatever religion it is. I think we should utilize those.
And just on the trash, like, I do think talking about composting and talking about the new containerization rules and talking about the pushback from supers to the change in hours. Are that could be one meeting, it could be a trash meeting and a composting meeting, but
like that.
if we're on the topic of things we want to add to
We
the
are.
next year. I think you might have actually mentioned this in an email, but overdose prevention centers as another thing at the intersection of.
Such a-
Yeah, but you know,
Didn't New York just have to get closed down, the one, like,
The-
safe injection, the two safe injection sites?
well, the US Attorney for the Southern District of New York said that we had to shut them down. Then there was competing guidance from city, state about like how to continue their operations, given the federal and they're not legal. I think this is gonna continue to be an ongoing discussion. I think there's a lot of great evidence that they are critical and only positives, when and where they do exist, and that insofar as we remain in the limbo where we're operating them in a semi-legal way. I would love for us to advocate for additional ones that are in Lower Manhattan.
I just wanted to.
And we don't, you know, the conversation would be about that as an option, not about advocating it, but
There's a lot of education that, I
certainly.
mean, I would love
Yeah.
to gain and.
Yes,
maybe we
it's
could
an interesting
see that.
I'm just like, I was at this meeting where you have the agency representatives and the community boards, what is it called? The borough board.
Borough board?
Allocation meeting.
Oh, the budget
The
consultation?
budget consultation meeting. And there was someone from a community board where there is one of these, and they were freaking out. They were like, you know, what are you gonna do about the impacts to our neighborhood? And I said, what allocations do you have for measuring, you know, spillover effects? And they said, well, no, we have, you know, demands that we make from our contractors in terms of their services. And I'm like, I get that. And that makes a lot of sense. How many people's lives are you saving? All very important. But is anybody looking at what happens to the neighborhood around it? Because that's where the fire will come. And we still have an illegal drug trade that, you know, that these don't circumvent. And so it's
Topic for conversation.
Do we,
a topic for conversation.
yeah, it would be interesting to know from a data perspective, like how frequent the overdose incidence is in the district. Because I think that is. This is not a district where like a ton of people tend to be shooting up. Like, we're not on the.
Really?
I think that's very broad. You know, when you're talking about like,
Vis-a-vis other neighborhoods.
Sure.
Like, this is very different than
Right,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
western part of Hell's Kitchen, where like you have corridors, many corridors where there's open air drug use, right?
So
Well-
that this is it's much higher, I mean, visibly, it's much more visible here than it was 3 years ago.
yeah, and it's not just the Washington Square area. We're talking about all the way to Grand Street. That is very visible.
It's visible. I don't know what the date
Okay,
is.
yeah.
Just interrupt.
Really good question.
Akila asked
Carter.
to join us. Carter, yes, but first I want to welcome Akila. Akila Aspie is a new member of our committee. And what we're talking about, Akila, is two things. What we want to advocate for
Yes.
to the city and what we want to talk about next year.
Okay.
Because our agenda is mostly self-generated. On rare occasions are we asked to do something. The rest of the time it's self-generated, which I find challenging, frankly. But the way we've been resolving it is at the end of the year, we need to advocate for the human services needs of our district. So what do we need to learn throughout the year that will help us do that? Who do we need to talk to? So we've had meetings with a lot of social service providers in our district, and we meet with them regularly. The Door services.
Yeah, love them.
Greenwich House, which services,
Love
I mean,
them.
our interest in them
Yeah.
is their senior services.
Yeah.
We've met with food pantries and, independent organizations that don't necessarily have city contracts, but that provide social services. So that's what we're talking about now. So just to bring up, a couple of subjects we've talked about for next year. Well, for this year, we seemed to have consensus, correct me if I'm wrong, that the top priorities for us are that intersection between street homelessness, serious mental illness, and substance issues. I personally think it's one of the biggest issues for our community district, but we'll see how the people feel. And then Carter, I'll come to you in just a sec. For the upcoming year, which we're sort of like just a few of us, so we can merge these conversations. We've talked about public bathrooms and trying to advocate for those and study that issue, and also studying the issue of overdose prevention centers, which is a thorny one in my opinion, and also seeing who on the community board should be engaging with the Department of Sanitation, because there are a lot of changes going on in the Department of Sanitation, which are exciting, and we don't know how they're being addressed on the community board level. Carter? Thanks for your patience.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm outside. One thing, I don't know if anybody here has been actually trained in using Narcan, but that should be a training that this committee does twice a year, and gets people. It's very quick, but that's step one. And number two, there is a lot of drug use, and it happened, a lot of overdoses. A lot of that stuff happens in the mornings and the early afternoons that people don't see, because most of the street drug trade here, it occurs in the morning and the afternoons, and it's done, which is not what people think. And I know last night at the 6th Precinct Community Council meeting, for example, a lot of stores, Starbucks in particular, they had I think 3 overdoses in the last month or two in their store. And this ties into sort of the public bathrooms and the challenges and how do you work through those issues. And is with the street homeless, the majority of them, whenever I go to any of the police sector meetings, the police meetings, or everybody knows everybody by name. The problem is they can't get them in. And for anybody who's new to this, it takes 100 contacts or more often to achieve success. But the people who want services in our area are able to readily get them. So we have this intersect of this problem, and that's what Paul's place. I'd really like to hear more about how they're doing engaging with the chronic homelessness, because that's really the design of that facility, is to deal with that. So really understanding the success there would really help us better understand what we can advocate for funding, because our needs are a little bit different in some respects, because we don't have as many places on the street that are as hospitable for people. So it's just the issues here are different. It doesn't mean they're not there. I had a good conversation with Peter Say from the district attorney's office, and I had asked him about their alternative intervention programs, and he said he'd be willing to come to talk to us about those. And I think a lot of people don't know about that, and it'd be very helpful, because we have a lot of tensions around that type of stuff. But how are how are they engaging with folks and getting help? And then lastly, the NYU is a space in the Paulson Center, which they're actively marketing to a nonprofit, and some of the targeted preferential groups for that are mental health providers, some other social service providers, and the first deadline was September 18th, which has passed, but they're keeping open I guess applications until the spring if it's not yet filled. And that would be great for some of the smaller providers that are maybe looking for a space. I don't know how the price works out, for actually paying for it or how that works, but I think NYU is looking for something that might be able to engage with its students as well. So those are just a couple thoughts of the now and the future, but it's a lot of challenges, but we keep staying on the surface of them, and it'd be really good to get in and really understand. And Paul's Place, I think, is something to better understand. And I know sometimes they're a little reluctant to be too forthcoming. They're not, okay. I mean, on the issues that they have, with the roughness around the edges, but that's what we want to know about to try to improve and make it better. And I know they have long lines, right? All those, the seats are signed up for early in the day.
Yeah, I'm on the community advisory board, obviously the CB2 representative. I don't go to all the meetings, but I can tell you a couple of takeaways from this. They always fill up. They have to have a lottery. They now have a lottery system to prevent, to mitigate what was happening, which was crowds gathering on the street to wait to get in. So they'd have a lottery system to mitigate spillover effects on the neighborhood. They've been very open and forthcoming. And the biggest takeaway for me was there are residents on the advisory board, and there are problems, and there are calls to the cops and things like that, but the residents feel that Paul's Place is being very responsive. So I feel like that's the most important monitoring that we can do. And
one last thing, our
Yeah.
former women's shelter is back on the market. It's vacant. It was Showfields most recently. They've moved out. Just, an example of a facility that was privatized that we did have, that is now back and empty and vacant. And, and this is the challenge for us, is most of our privately owned spaces are too expensive for social services providers to rent. And that's really a big challenge. So when people wonder why we don't have services in our community, it's because they all have to pay market rate rents to provide them. And that's the challenge, because we don't have any, we don't have any city-owned sites. And that's how do we bridge that gap? Because that's why nobody comes here to open them, and it's only on the periphery.
I'm sorry, you're on the street. I'm sorry. You can't. I have to be careful jumping in because I realize it takes a second for you to hear me. Yes, the real estate costs are very high, and also we have a very active community that has initiated lawsuits and has voted down shelter, has brought a lot of political weight to bear on the openings of shelters. So it's a complicated thing. Even when the city is able to find sites, it's a very hard road.
Is he referring to that women's shelter in the village? The West
Yeah, on West 11th
opened like 3 or 4 years ago.
No, there's a building on 11th Street between 5th and 6th that is supposed to become a shelter for 70 women. It's going to be run by Project Renewal. They came before the community board, I don't want to say 4 years ago. We were on Zoom, and it got so many people came out in support of it that, we don't have to opine on a shelter, and I would pretend not to. But in this case, there was so much support for it that we wrote a resolution in support of it. But then there was a lawsuit filed against the property owner and by one of the tenants, by one of the tenants. I don't know who paid for that lawsuit, and that lawsuit was calendared, I think, or dismissed. I don't know. I have no understanding of legally speak, but in other words, there was an issue, the issue was addressed, and it's off the calendar. So it's basically that lawsuit is dead. But I understand that there's another lawsuit, and I'm not sure about it. And actually, I know someone in real estate who needs to talk to me about it, so we'll find out about that.
Okay.
And then the one on Grand Street, as you know, there was big political push
Yeah.
to, and then in the end, what happened was, it got approved and then the mayor, killed it. My understanding is because of a union issue, because my understanding is there was a concern by one of the unions and he didn't want to make them unhappy. And then we have the one on 14th Street,
Which I live around the corner from the one on 14th Street on a positive light.
yeah,
And I walk by it probably like once a day. And
Yeah.
honestly, the like number of issues or moments have been negligible.
I'm happy to hear
Where
that.
there's like even a crowd or people who are doing something otherwise than just like eating outside or something. Like,
They've been very responsive. They've also increased their security in response to neighborhood concerns. It's a tricky block also because of the Salvation Army. So
Mhm.
keep going.
Yeah, this is gonna be in a different direction, but it was inspired by something Carter said about going deeper.
Safety. Remind me of it.
Public safety, but just in terms of the underlying causes of the street homelessness issues and thus the substance use and mental health issues that are exacerbated by homelessness. I think it might behoove us to have a meeting about the city of Yes for Housing Opportunities zoning text amendment through the lens of what it would mean for homelessness in New York. I am sure, or I'm actually not sure, but I'm pretty confident that it's gonna go to land use. As like its first stop at CB2. This is like the mayor's or the Department of City Planning's proposal to allow for more housing creation, more affordable housing creation, the creation of 100,000 units to house 250,000 New Yorkers. And it's the third of the 3 City of Yes packages that the mayor put out. We voted on the first one a couple months ago, not this committee, but the board voted. It was the thing about City of Yes for carbon neutrality. So this is gonna be the third one. It's gonna come to the boards in the spring. I think land use did have a meeting about overall,
Aspect of it, right?
but I think it could be interesting because obviously the undersupply of housing and the high cost of rent is the driver of homelessness and then homelessness too. So that could be interesting.
That would be interesting. Will you educate us a little bit on that? I want,
Not right now.
no, I didn't.
I could go on, of course, but I'm not going.
Public safety, there's been a question of whether public safety is part of our committees. Originally, when I chaired this committee, I was told that it was. And I worked to try to get the precincts in, and which is very challenging because they already have their community, meetings and they don't want to have to attend another one. And there are 4 of them, I think, that service our district. And also, a meeting with a community precinct is a point in time meeting. It's very hard to talk about overall trends, right? But then I was told that it wasn't part of our committee. So I let it go. But I don't know where it resides. And I do wonder issues of substance use, for example, issues of what's going on in Washington Square Park. I mean, the question that's a valid question to ask is, what is the solution? Is it more social services or is it better law enforcement, right? So there are people using drugs and there are people selling drugs. Right. So I have a lot of compassion for those who are using drugs. I have very little compassion for those who don't. But I think that it might be something that we want to somehow tackle. And it's kind of a hornet's nest.
Can I
Yeah.
respond? I think that's a really great point because the trends that I've seen across the nation is that they're criminalizing drug users.
Will you speak a little louder so that
Oh,
there can
Yeah, they're criminalizing drug users. So there have been, I don't know, there's like news reports on this, like people are being put into jail for like murder when they're using fentanyl with a friend and their friend dies. Right, so this has been like the intersectionality between what is considered public safety and what is considered mental health or social service needs are very intertwined. And kind of dovetailing into that, one of the things that, and I don't see public safety officers trained at all in the mental health service needs enough to administer to a community. So I think the training is very different between what it takes to be a public safety officer and what it takes to be a mental health provider. I don't think the training is different. I know the training is different because I'm a psychologist and I could never be a public safety officer. So I know that I don't have that training at all. And I was like looking through the list of like what services we have in our community. And I don't know if it's here and I missed it, but I'm wondering what are the status of mobile crisis units? Because there are mental health mobile crisis units
IMT, top of
that the city used to have.
No,
and
they
I-
have, it
And
has.
I think they still do have, but we have some centers of major drug use areas. And also we have like permanent, semi-permanent mentally ill residents on our streets. You know, people, I see them every single day. I know who they are.
And so do the outreach workers.
Yeah, and all of them know, but we really need like mental health professionals
Yes.
in a mobile crisis unit situation, making those 20 contacts in order to get them into the service places that they need and in order to get services to them. So I don't really know, like,
Well, I think,
the mobile crisis unit
Yeah.
is like something we could ask to
oh,
have.
no, yes, yes,
In
yes,
our
yes,
community
yes. We already
full-time?
have, we
Oh,
will.
we do?
Well,
Well,
Where-
Susanna, in our past resolution, when we had the guest, we had put in the resolution that we will remember this moment to ask for more budget for them. And
Which-
that I think has become probably a major component as housing continues to, be so elusive in terms of resolution. For them to have more budget to be on the streets to address this temporary help.
wait,
And we did talk about that in our meeting.
wait, which one? Because I'm
We-
thinking of what we had on mental illness.
Yeah, yeah, the mental illness, and it was a very in-depth of how much they're doing and their result. And at that time, we wrote a resolution or whatever that's called in English, that we were gonna
It's called a
support them.
resolution. It's called a
That we
resolution.
were gonna support them, and then we're gonna remember at this moment, this year, at this moment, to make sure that we advocate for more budget, because really that is the venue right now.
So, yeah,
I just wanted to add something to what Akila said, that I absolutely agree with what she was saying. I think also the political momentum in the city right now and the messaging that's coming down from the mayor is more police, more enforcement, more police, more enforcement. And so it does make me wonder whether that's something that we need to reinforce, given racial disparities in policing,
Well,
the,
policing is a hornet's nest.
it is a hornet.
Think the word police and like,
I know, but
people go crazy.
it's very hard to say
So-
public safety, like there are two sides to public safety, and one of them is the police, their actions, their approach, their intensity in responding to certain events. And so I think, to me, I certainly agreeing with Akila's point, is that I think if we, as a community board, can actually act almost a little bit more as a counterbalance to that and try to amp up the services aspect.
I think what I'm hearing you say is, first of all, I am not suggesting that we ask for more police enforcement of drug users. I think that we have a established position on the community board of wanting people who have difficult lives to be treated compassionately. So I don't think that I cannot see ourselves advocating for cops to bust drug addicts. I do think that the issue of drug dealers is a bigger concern. And I think that I would be nervous to enter into that conversation. I don't know if there's a place for it, but it does make me nervous. But I just want to wait. But just to go back to what you raised, we had this big meeting in the spring on the issue of serious mental illness. And we had it with a number of different community boards because we wanted to send a joint message from there was all the community boards south of 59th Street. So all the downtown community boards, we all agreed. And one of the things we asked for is additional IMT teams, intensive mobile treatment. So the city has on its own, part of the mayor's plan, committed to 5 additional teams. The teams it's very expensive per person, per capita, but a team is a pretty flexible machine. In other words, it's $1.5 million.
Okay.
If you build it up and you close it down. The biggest problem with it is staffing it. But I think that before you arrived, we're talking that is something we certainly want to keep pushing on.
The mobile crisis. And the reason why I think the public safety, I mean, what I was saying before about the public safety and the mental health, I think we can be stronger with the unified message as long as we understand that we stay in our lane. So like public safety officer, it's really important how they interact with the community. But when a public safety officer tries to become a mental health provider or vice versa, that doesn't work. So it's like, I think the advocacy around both is really important, but we need to say maybe in a collective voice, public safety officers and social service groups, we need more funding. And this is a multidimensional problem that requires us to enter the problem at different points. So mental health providers enter from over here, dealing with the mental health needs, which by the way, I mean, I totally get your sentiment about the drug sellers, but often they're not exactly mutually exclusive either.
Right.
So there's a lot of overlap and it's very complicated and really needs multiple professionals in different capacities interfacing with whoever it is to understand what the needs are and what the impact is on the community. But yeah, I don't know.
Just in terms of where to go from here, I think we mentioned Peter Say potentially coming to talk about some non-law enforcement approaches to, I mean, maybe I don't know simply what that is meant to be
That's what
about.
Carter was talking about. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
But that feels like the right meeting in which to talk about police, what are the alternative interventions? What is the current attention from the mayor or from the DA?
I would also like to find an opportunity to improve relations with the police, under the belief that collaboration and support yields better results. Just an anecdote, I was getting into the subway station. At the top of the subway station, a girl is shooting up. She's doesn't even have a rubber tube on, sweater around her. And I go downstairs and there's 2 cops standing there. And I think, wow, I mean, I guess what do? You're gonna arrest her? And they're like, no, we can't arrest her. And also it's totally legal. And they're handing out syringes, they're giving out crack pipes, I
don't know that.
These 2 officers, these 2 officers were completely disengaged and felt completely defeated. It raises a question for me, is there a way to have a more effective relationship?
I will say, I think.
Guys, there are 11 meetings a month in our community board from local cop. Last night was the 6th precinct community council meeting. There are 4 sectors. We have 4 precincts in our community. There's plenty of chances to engage. Nobody goes to the meetings. There were 3 community board members at the 6th last night. I was at my local sector meeting. There's 1 person, me, and I hear that over and over. It's that nobody's going.
It's hard.
It's not that they don't have them. And
No,
you will
they
hear
do.
exactly this.
They do.
You'll hear exactly this, what they talk about. They say it's not illegal to use drugs because, to Akila's point, they're not arresting people for that. And they're frustrated because nobody wants the help. And they know many of these people on a first name basis. And that's sort of the challenge that, what I had raised before is how do you get to the next part of helping somebody in the outreach? And it's the frustration that's over and over and over from everybody.
For this meeting also, and based on what we met early in the year, can we, make that commitment of asking for more budget for the mobile homes? I just want to remind that we spent $29 million a day in cops. So let's offset that and not discuss that enormity. Whatever it costs mobile, it is nothing. And that is the way we become activists against policies that are just ridiculous and budget and ethical moves. So we should commit tonight. We know that through the year we heard this has gotten worse. And we have vouch to make that commitment, and we should seal that commitment tonight for the budget ask.
Yes, we have, I think that's Emma. No, Emma, please.
Also coming out of that meeting, the mental health meeting, I think something that I was quite compelled by and might be something we could advocate for is the intervention support for hygiene, grooming, like those sorts of engagement opportunities. When you think of just pure services, like I love the public restrooms, right? Like how do we just create ways for folks to live in a more dignified way? And just like, again, present opportunities for engagement.
Yeah.
So I was quite compelled by
Yeah, that's
the
interesting.
shower units, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
you know?
When I lived in
The-
San Francisco, they had a lot of those and they were extremely effective, like
Very
both mobile,
Yeah.
mobile showers and mobile bathrooms. That literally was like a truck
Exactly.
that would park in a parking spot and they would move, right? Like I think some of these is also, as we think about it, we don't always need to conceptualize a $3 million bathroom in a park. Like a fixed bathroom is great, that's ideal. But there are existing out the box solutions. Or like, can you just park a truck on 6th Ave that's a mobile bathroom?
I mean, if they can bring one to Burning Man, you can bring it.
Really?
I mean, and the other thing is to keep
Oh.
safe bathrooms, right? Like
Mhm.
maybe have.
And attendant,
Well, we have to.
Next.
yeah, you have to have a person.
And Susanna, in that note, I also think that I don't know if there's a kind of like a vertical ask, right? Because I know that Parks is also doing their budget, that we can, I don't know, make a recommendation saying, please, advocate for more money budget for the Parks bathrooms to be maintained or more accessible and more hours as, as our goals expand more than this committee.
One
And
thing
I'd
I
also,
want to say about mobile treatment, my understanding about how the IMTs work is that they don't actually, it's not actually a van. It's a relationship where the client is mobile and the caseworker is mobile with him or her.
So they have to be attached to services already in order to get mobile?
They are recommended to IMT through something called single point of access. So they can be recommended by a hospital or a shelter or a family member, and then they get in the system. And then they are assigned to a unit,
Right.
and that unit follows that person. So the geographical location of it is actually not so strict. In other words, it could be someone who goes between Brooklyn and the Bronx. I mean,
Well, that's not what we need.
well, we do, because.
I mean, we need in addition to have an actual mobile crisis unit that can find people who need the
Yeah, I just
services.
don't know that model, I'm a dope, but I don't know, maybe that doesn't exist.
I mean, in New Jersey, I engaged a mobile crisis unit to do outreach to a total unknown client.
Like just sitting by Washington Square Park and having people come in.
Well, like I would say, this is where this person is found. Can you please send a team to respond?
Oh, yes, they do that now.
And so then they would.
you can do that on the 311 app.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
You can, that's their most engagement points come from that. Every single New Yorker can say homeless assistance, and one of the team goes out there within an hour. And that may have changed, it's a little longer,
No,
and it works. And then people decline the services, and that's the problem.
Who showed up in New Jersey was a psychiatrist.
Well, it depends on
With
who,
two,
yeah,
so it was like an actual mental health provider,
they have a
With
combination.
police that met her there. So it was
Yeah,
like,
they don't have police, I think.
it
it's-
was that thing. So I don't know, and like I've engaged with service like that in New Jersey,
Right.
for clients who needed support, but like not, in New York, they had something similar, but this was years ago. I don't know what it. if
They have so many different things. The Be Heard. And then there's all kinds of questions about whether Be Heard is working or whether it's wasting money. And, but anyway, I
But if
think
we
that to
engage
get,
them, they'll have a lot of work.
get to the basic premise, I think that in one way or another, we're going to be making some advocacy for some specific one-on-one case management that works on trying to get these people into services.
So that's a different.
Susanna, I have to jump, but I want to bring up one other thing, a lot of the examples that people suggest for on-street services undermine right to shelter. And I'd encourage people to really think about that. For example, mobile showers undermines the city's right to shelter law, which many other cities do not have. And I think that we really need to right now, as that's coming under attack, to really support right to shelter. And that's sort of at the root of the difference with New York City with some of the other cities. And it's something to think about, that we actually have physical locations that are a step to housing, that are a step to actual resolving street homelessness. And it's just something that is easy to think about other solutions you see, but these other cities don't have right to shelter the way we do. And that's a big, issue right now, because unfortunately there are some political wins, that could end that fundamental right in New York. And I think that we need to be cautious with anything that might undermine that.
Well, they might make a distinction also between,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a domestic, whatever, there's a lot of ways it could go. I could see having right to shelter for a domestic versus immigrant population. I mean, I just, yeah, it's tricky.
Are we, I guess I misinterpreted the mobile response unit. Are we just talking about people who are, let's say, perpetually homeless, not those who are amidst a mental health crisis?
No, I mean. you
No,
can
it's
call-
broad. It's broad.
Yeah, Manhattan Outreach
Okay.
Consortium will go
There you
to
go.
anybody.
Okay, okay.
So if you see somebody on the street having an episode.
Yeah.
You call 311 and they will reach out.
Okay.
You know, you don't always know if someone is homeless.
Yeah.
You know, they
Yeah.
might be sitting.
That was my,
They might be sitting
yeah.
on the street all day long.
Right.
Which they have a right to do, especially in a park.
Mhm.
So.
I have two thoughts. One is, though I disagree with Carter that
Whatever.
talking about additional undermines right children, I actually was inspired by what he said, that maybe we should be writing the letter or resolution or something as a committee to send a full board to say that CB2 supports right to shelter and doesn't think it should be undermined. That's just
Have
a
some
thought.
opinions about it.
Okay, so that's one thought. My other thought is another topic, but it is a topic that I think is at the intersection of substance use and homelessness and public safety, and also the LGBTQ reality, which is sex work, and specifically sex work performed by queer
Like,
folks
sexy people.
on Christopher Street.
There's still a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't see it so much anymore.
And there is, last year I had occasion to hear from many people who were at the nexus of those issues and felt over policed. And I know there's some contact between those communities of folks at the center. I think there even was a documentary that came out called Peer Kids a couple of years ago about that community. And there is constant debate in Albany about sex work and decriminalization thereof, which I would love to see us support. But as a first step, we could potentially discuss it. So that just, I feel like we already have a full calendar now for next year.
We have a lot of really interesting topics, and I think.
And we haven't even talked about folks, seniors in the community, which I think we always want to.
Yeah, I think that we always want to check in with some of the main service providers. We've never met with the center. I feel like they don't really need our help, don't really seem particularly interested in it, but I can reach out to them. Because they obviously are an important organization, the door, we need them time, we need to meet with GH, Greenwich House, which provides seniors. Time, we need to meet with Lennox Health. We're having a meeting next week with Lennox Health Greenwich Village. Please tell your friends to come. We are, I've heard a couple of anecdotes of people having a very difficult time when they have to go from LHGV to a hospital that is not Lenox Hill. And that is not good. So I heard a story from someone who lives in California and in the end did not want to disclose. In order for Lenox Health to really delve into it, they needed them to release all their information. They weren't comfortable doing that. I think Richu's mother or someone she knows had an issue with it. I'm hoping that people from the public will come, so that they can share it. But at a minimum, if no one shows up, we're still gonna just get some ironclad understanding about what the hell is their policy, because the stories I've heard are like, people had to wait 3 hours for the ambulance that would take them to NYU. I mean, ridiculous shit, like the nurse at the, I'm sorry, I'm speaking, this is a public meeting and it's being recorded and I'm just like,
It's so
you know, that like a nurse said to them, if I were you, I'd just go out and take a taxi. They're like, yeah, but he might have a heart attack and he might, you know. Anyway, so that's our meeting next week.
And that's the Northwell place on.
That's the emergency room, yeah. Lennox Health,
Yeah.
Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
By Northwell, which has a relationship to Lennox Hill.
Yeah,
They're part of Lennox Hill.
yes, yeah.
So Susanna, unfortunately, like Callan Lord, I mean, next to like, when I think about this center, right? They're not they're in 18th Street, so they're not in our district, but they do have mobile homes that are addressing all the things that.
Local
brought up.
units. Yeah.
And they are in our district. I would, because when I did the health fair, the city actually gave them a van, a custom van that they designed to go into different communities to provide HIV care, Narcan, the whole thing. And the unit is amazing. It has private places for meetings as well. There's there's a mini lab as well. There's Wi-Fi, there's bathroom, AC. I mean, and they designed it. It belongs to the city, but they had advocated for that community. So that's a perfect, so when I had them at the health fair at Pride, it was a great way to tour what community can do and advocate for budget to do that. So that was a perfect example. And I think we can invite them because they actually are on site doing all this testing and providing is what Housing Works does. Is by doing that, they're also engaging for a long-term relationship or a partial relationship that will lead into other portals of stable healthcare and housing. And I think
Do you know anybody at Callan Lord you can hook me up with? Because I'd love to talk to them.
Yes.
Okay.
And I love them all.
Hook me up with someone at Callan Lord. I haven't talked to them in a long time.
No, and they're wonderful. And their execution is a really good example of how internally community can raise money and have those units.
Okay, I want to just, before we close, because since we're getting to the end of things, I just want to go over the things we advocated for in resolutions in the past year and see if we should be asking for them, okay? So,
Okay.
for example, wait, I gotta look at our resolution. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, one was about migrants, one was about the door. Okay, so we supported capital grants to enable the door to modify its physical plan. I would like to advocate for that. Probably I should check in with them to see where they stand with that, but which is, I have to do that. Then Paul's Place, have we asked for any money for them? I don't think we have asked for money for them, so that's fine. Then this is the whole thing on SMI, a serious mental illness, which we have talked about at length. And I think there might also have been, there was a note about Greenwich House. And they wanted some capital too.
They wanted.
Oh, they want the
shuttle.
shuttle, yeah, I asked them about that this summer.
No.
I mean, I asked it. All right. So those things we're gonna add.
Things in.
Yes.
That I'm sorry.
No, I agree.
But I spent the whole day on budget consultation,
Yeah.
so it's fresh in my mind. One of the things that, so there's, as you correctly noted at the top of the meeting, there are 3 top priorities that the community board as a whole will vote upon. Then each subject matter area, which is not exactly congruent with your committee, but largely, will identify additional, you'll identify a top issue, but then you can have any number of budget requests.
Right.
And the part that I wanted to emphasize in this moment is that there are 2 flavors. There is capital and there's expense.
Right.
So a capital is
Any-
costs more than $50,000 and lasts more than 5 years.
Right,
And an expense is something that doesn't fit into that category. Easy way to think about it is a capital expense is to build a basketball court. An expense is to run a program that engages kids in it, so hiring the coach and like that. Okay. Some things are surprising that, because they don't last 5 years, so even though they may feel like capital, they're actually not. But your van probably is capital, and your operational support probably is expense. So you can think in terms of each of your target areas for both capital and expense things. Some things much more lend themselves.
I just
For
wonder.
example, DYCD, everything they do is outsourced to for youth. It's outsourced to a program provider, so
Oh,
they
that's
have
true.
zero capital needs other than
Oh.
their own offices. Everything is contracts to service providers.
Well,
And
that's true with all of the stuff that we're talking about, right?
largely, yeah,
I mean, an IMT is all contracted,
right.
and I don't know if they consider that a capital or an expense. When they make a contract with
It depends
whatever,
on what they're buying. So you might,
they're only buying a contract,
right,
so I guess that's an expense.
For the most part, you're right.
Okay,
But there may be, like, depending on how we do it, the mobile bathrooms could be a capital
got it.
item,
Or it could be an expense.
or it could be expensive if you rent them. For
Yeah.
or how many you buy. Last point, I'm sorry. to
Yeah,
keep interjecting,
keep going.
but I've been, you're absolutely right, and the complaints that we hear on our end have a lot to do with law enforcement. And putting the other side of the coin up, which is addressing the root problem rather than this law enforcement solution to it, without in any way denigrating the police, for whom I have great respect. But it's not their, it's not their training, it's the training of people who have different skills and different calling. Having that as part of your, and of course now lost the thread, but
Explaining that.
Yeah.
And as part of our narrative, I think that's what.
Well,
you're
it's part of your
getting at.
narrative, but in terms of, I'm sorry, come back to me, because there was a further point there with respect to how to present.
I think the question of public safety is when I'm gonna. We'll, we won't delve into, well, we certainly won't delve into this, whether we decide to find a smart way of handling it next year is another question.
So we can start, we could potentially start backing into it by talking about some of the mental health services.
I think that we definitely gonna make an ask for
Mhm.
mental health service,
Mhm.
right? And whatever, an IMT, I mean, yeah, what were you gonna say?
I'm sorry, so
I came back.
a way to bring this back is the Village Alliance is convening meetings, they're in the afternoon. That, and the Village Alliance is a bid, basically, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but.
it's the
Okay.
business improvement district,
Right. So there, and then the reason it occurred to me is that one of the things that the businesses that are closing in our neighborhood because of the conduct and behavior along that Sixth Avenue corridor. Try running a business where someone is
Right,
making use of your front door because there is their mobile bathroom.
Yes.
So this,
connect with them.
and I'll try to take better notes next month and I'll start
No,
sharing
go
them.
to meetings.
So
Afternoons are good for me.
Okay,
maybe ask the Soho bid how they.
I don't
with that.
know.
every bid at the district service cabinet
Yeah,
talks about this
Mm.
one way or another.
Mm.
And so in terms of the health of the business community.
Right,
You will find allies, is what I'm trying to say.
right,
If you address public safety in one way or another, because everybody realizes that Rikers Island is not the answer to all the problems that we're confronting, but people are incredibly frustrated. And
it's fair.
our board would seem a little bit out of touch if we didn't have somewhere in all of this.
Acknowledgement of
There you
the impact on quality of life and local business.
to add that too, all kinds of businesses are facing issues around this. I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine who has her kids at Downing Street Playgroup. And they've actually had an exodus of multiple families because there are needles in the Downing Street Park And everyone's concerned about contact fentanyl with young children.
God.
And so they've lost families and they're under enrolled for the first time that I can remember in years, that the
It's a-
Downing Street Playgroup's under enrolled.
Hmm.
And, you know, I said, has anyone tried to speak to the fire department just a few blocks down? Because the fire department has been really great outside of my son's school, just like making sure that the playground is clear for the kids to come
Yeah,
through.
it's tricky.
And they've, you know, done that for the kids. But one of the things I'd like to maybe understand, and I don't know, if maybe everyone on the committee understands this, but like, there is a procedure that the city has for responding to emergencies,
Yes.
right? They send ambulance, fire department,
Yes.
police, every time you call.
No, depends.
Well,
Depends.
I don't- yeah.
311 is different.
for 911.
Oh, 911, yeah.
I always feel like they send those three things.
Mhm.
But even if you're saying this is a mental health crisis, they're never sending a psychiatrist. They're sending an ambulance, and like what if you call 911?
Yeah, you're not supposed to call 911 unless someone is dangerous. If someone is
Right.
dangerous, you're supposed to call 911.
Right.
If someone is,
Danger.
or in
But-
danger.
See, right. But I feel like that feeling of danger is very subjective. And a lot of
That's
people don't
true.
understand what danger is when you're talking about a mental health crisis. And the understanding of danger is different than like someone wielding a weapon or a gun or something.
My impression is that the relationships between the outreach teams that are social service
Yeah.
providers and that have peer counselors on them and, you know, my impression is that that relationship is much closer than we think. That there's a lot more recognition and understanding of they can do. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer,
yeah.
but that's for another day. Yeah.
Question kind of to your point on the what is danger point. Is like community education something that the board would be involved in, the committee would be involved in? And I'm thinking specifically mental health first aid. It's a very well-known program. It's not relevant in all of these.
It's relevant. Yeah,
in-
I'm a little discouraged on education.
Yeah, okay.
Just because no, I mean, I'm all.
No, this is exactly.
We had a conversation about a shelter on Canal Street and there was a lot of worry about sex offenders being at the shelter. So we had a whole meeting about what is a sex offender, what isn't a sex, you know, no one came and we wrote a report. I don't know if anyone reads it. I mean, it's important to be educated that way, but I don't know the limits of that. The impact of what that is.
Good questions, like, do we call 911? Do we call 311? A lot of people want to know that.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think what we do
But I
is we try to mention it at every single meeting when we talk
Yeah.
about those things. Because there's always someone who says, what should I do, right?
I think we could also, I think we could leverage our position in service of education, even if we're not doing it. Like, we could go to the city with a list of things we think should be on Link NYC screens.
Mhm.
Or, you know, leverage other, well, it was my sex earlier point about they don't talk about composting. You know, or. That person, community thing.
You're one.
But I think, but that's the reason, like, inviting people in the space like Cal and Lord, I think execution is really important because when people are on the ground doing the work, that education happens more naturally, because then you're there and you're seeing your neighbors getting help or you need help. They tell you what are the process and options that you have and the resources being done.
Also, our elected officials all send out newsletters to every mailbox, often
Right.
with limited
But this-
fullness, but we could be asking them to include certain things that we think.
It's a really good way, like, there are vehicles.
There was that period during COVID, unfortunately, where there was a huge spike in hate crimes. And the city did have a public education. It was like distract, disarm. It was like all Ds. Do you all remember what I'm talking about? It was like when someone's having like, or conflict resolution, like here's the steps you should do. It's like distract, deflect.
What are you doing?
Well, the question, I don't know.
I know, I don't know either. I just.
Do any of us know?
I don't never know what education campaigns do.
I know.
I'm not being so cynical about it.
But just because it was something, it might be another thing where like, could we find out if whoever ran that program, like, did they find it to be remote?
effective?
Like, was it effective?
Yeah, did they collect any
Did they
data?
collect any data?
Yeah.
It's more of an ask than we should necessarily do it.
To that point, I bet if we asked
BSNY, they would say they're running a multi-million dollar.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
I mean,
Would-
I also
would-
will say that. I feel like our community board approves all of these like community events, like tons of community events. It's like, could we have like a health tent?
I won't do that.
I don't know.
But I welcome it.
Vision dreaming,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
get information to our community members, right? That will be useful to
Yes.
them, like, so they
I
know when to call
hear you.
311
I
or
hear you.
911, or they know that. I mean, the number one question I get all the time with every single friend of mine who has a kid who's in middle school with 2 middle school kids. I have to send my kid on the subway. I don't know how to teach them to interact with, or how to deal with
Yeah.
mentally ill people on the subway.
I think-
What do I do? I literally get this question like
Hmm.
every week. I stand in front of the school and I'm like, well, and I give them like 3 things.
Hmm.
This is what your kid needs to do. 99.9% of the time they'll be fine, and those kinds of questions I get all the time. And I feel like people want to know what to do, how to help.
Also like to know.
I agree. I would like to
How do we
recommend,
find
maybe we make a list of, to me, that is a role for the elected officials.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you my prejudice. My prejudice is that when I first joined this committee, the woman who ran it was very interested in seniors, and she used to host an annual seniors fair. And she would spend like half the year, like people were supposed to organize for it, and we had to, it's like, I am not doing that. I will not do that. Someone else can do it, and someone else who chairs this committee can do it, but I won't do that. I think that elected officials are
Yeah.
always doing that, and
Yeah.
it's a really good thing for
Yeah.
them to do.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get them
Maybe
some
what
good
we should
information.
do is just, I'll call Pat and I'll say, and Eric Botcher's office, and say, we're hearing a lot of.
Yeah.
We got a lot of,
Right, like you
elected officials.
you have these.
Our
Well,
district.
these Events,
I-
can you also give people information about mental health crises.
So one of the health fair that I organized was health fair at Pride. And basically I bring community, which is Cal and Lord, different organizations of different walks of life to execute in person during Pride. And we take over the street that is south of Washington Square.
Uh-huh.
And that's really important. And then leadership comes in, but actually we should have more of that. And I'm really glad that obviously we get the permit every year now, and it's free for everybody, but it's just that contact to know where to get things, and the resources are in, but we don't have enough of those. I mean, schools should be having those things on a regular basis. But everybody's too worried about selling t-shirts and all that kind of stuff, or selling perfumes, and we should be taking the streets and organizing that kind of stuff. It costs $25 to get a permit.
Right, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna just to circle back to like one of the key agenda items for this meeting. Is it too late to put out feelers to our kind of top tier service providers? And say like, do you have capital? I remember I met with the center once and I was like, what can the community board to do for you? And I remember them saying like, we have this capital thing. This was like years ago. But there's a lot of folks we haven't been in touch with lately. Maybe Greenwich House has different things now if they're.
I think that's a capital idea.
Yeah,
And maybe one of these.
And if you wouldn't mind sharing the burden with me,
I would.
if each of you could make a phone call, I would identify the center with whom we don't really speak.
Yeah.
The door,
The center, the door, Greenwich
Greenwich
House.
then there's God's Love We Deliver.
Fair every year.
God's Love We Deliver, they're actually very worried about congestion pricing. But I can't go there. There were, so how about those 3?
And Mox,
And what?
and Mox, the
Manhattan, the Manhattan Outreach Consortium,
Got it, Riverside.
I mean, would we want to ask Falls Place if they have capital needs?
sure,
I don't know who doesn't have capital needs at this point. When it comes to healthcare, it is like everybody needs capital anything.
for that matter, Judson Clinic, that's.
Yeah, but what
That
about our
they have-
methadone? We have a bunch of methadone clinics.
The methadone clinic is Greenwich House,
The one on Mercer Street.
yeah, that's Greenwich House.
Yeah.
They came to us and they're co-locating a bunch of health services in Mercer Street.
Yeah.
So that we should
Yeah.
definitely contact them because they
Yeah.
did have some capital requests. I think maybe Judson Clinic, which we've only met with
Yeah.
once, but, I think Paul's Place is less likely because they just opened. And,
More chairs, like, you know.
all right,
Well,
so I just need help doing it because I'm gonna be out of
I am
town all next week.
happy to make phone calls.
Okay, well then, let's, if you don't mind, let's divvy. the-
I'll take the center if that's right.
The ask would be to get a one paragraph letter back from them saying, here's what we need. Because if you submit that with your budget request, it will be taken a bit more seriously.
We can
The
do
mayor's
that.
not sitting up tonight wondering what it is that we're gonna come up with. But to the extent that we influence member items that are submitted by elected officials, this is the way to do it.
Okay, great. Now, so Ryder, you're doing the center. Do you have a contact at the center?
Yeah.
Okay. The door?
I mean, I would do them, but I would love a contact.
Yes, I will give us Akila a contact. I have a contact at the door. Greenwich House, I can call, what's his face, Darren Block. The Manhattan Outreach Consortium is a little trickier because it's CUCF, but the people who do it here are, I mean, they've had a lot of funding recently. If someone would like to call them, that's great. I could put you in touch with them.
Would it
Yeah,
be
I can-
appropriate for me to do that?
No, it would not be inappropriate for you to do that.
Great.
And Paul's Place, if you like, I can call Paul's Place. Because I have a lot of dealings there. And can someone take on Judson Clinic?
Yeah, I can do it. Do we have a contact? Who came in?
I will have a contact.
Yeah, we had somebody come and present last time.
Yeah, we did.
Do you think is asking God what we do, like, are they just because they?
We should call.
Sure.
I think we can talk to them if they want to send. I can reach out to them.
Yeah, I'm
You
on.
wanna see it? I have.
You can just feel it.
So, I will put on my note, that I have to
Just
give.
And if
No.
you approach like a cold call?
It's not a cold call because they come to us.
That's true, that's true.
So you're saying.
By call.
You're calling. Hi, this is Emma Smith. I'm from CB2. We met with the guys last year.
This is actually exactly
Our annual
perfect.
time when we
Okay.
write to the city to advocate for capital and expense, and we are asked
Yep.
our local service providers if there's anything you'd like us to advocate for.
And
Yep.
should we give them a
Blow you off?
max,
Top titties on that.
max dollar amount? Like, we're really looking for things under the range of,
No, no, let's just ask them what they're, we're not gonna ask them like, like a, a horse and carriage. I mean, just, do you have they might not have them.
Okay.
And fine, there are plenty of other needs in the city. Last year, I don't think we made any requests for budget, frankly,
Mhm.
or very few. And,
We're only asking for capital.
No,
and not
capital
expensive.
No,
Oh,
because
we
these
can-
get
okay.
prioritized across the whole community board, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
so, and our community board, then, it's the whole city, right?
Yeah.
Borough, and then it's the whole city, and it's funny, if you look at the responses to all of our annual budget requests, every single one is, this is a nice idea, but you have to go to so-and-so. You
Yeah.
can't fund this, this needs more study, there's never one I've read where they say,
We're doing that. Really fantastic.
No,
Well,
they
I don't
want
even-
yeah, it's a whole different, that's a whole different conversation.
but there is still value in it because it sends a message to our elected officials, and then
Right.
they have council money.
Yeah.
so.
Very much like everything we do as a board. Our impact is mediated.
Does everyone feel like they've been able to say their piece, and have their say and contribute?
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, have you felt?
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I just sat in for my journalism class, like my professor made me do this.
Yeah.
Like sit in. Yeah.
If you have any questions about what you heard.
Yeah, how can I contact you guys if I have like a question?
Get Mark Diller's contact.
Okay.
Get in touch with everybody. He's our district manager.
I would be happy to
Okay.
answer any questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Uh,
So much.
the board members, right, we're careful about not speaking for the board.
Mhm.
But, our district man, so the way, Mark Diller is our staff. You're all board members, we're all appointed, and we.
Volunteers.
Pleasure of the city, we're
Volunteers, yeah.
volunteers, we're volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Drop $60 worth of stuff.
Well, you can send it to me and you can send that to me.
I will. It was really just like, I pulled some stuff out just for us, and then I was like, I realized.
Do I have you guys
Are we?
write down how I can contact?
Yeah.
We're adjourning. Ivy, thank you so much. Carter, you're gone. Thank you for your input and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get vaccinated, everybody.